There you go.
Oh, we did it.
Yay, you.
I really don't like carrying this thing.
I know. That's okay.
Oh, what? You failed at the...
I did. I failed at setting up your spot.
Oh, the tides have turned.
That's weird.
You just tapped your nose.
I did. I don't like the fact that I even did that. There's already a spot there.
Well, that's because we ran out of 10 mil ammo.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. I can stand on my tippy toes.
Good morning. I need to go top up my coffee. You just go ahead and talk for the next hour.
Good morning. Hi. Sorry about the last broadcast. It was upside down and actually I didn't have the gimbal on yet, so when I turned it on it went whoop 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 and then put it in all kinds of different positions. It was bad.
Can we get those sound effects again?
Whoop whoop whoop. That is.
Anyways, good freaking morning, Elizabeth.
It's the best whenever you do it on top of your head. You got. It's crazy. Woo.
All right.
Well, do we have any announcements or anything to talk about? What are we?
Big announcements.
Big announcements. It is Monday. Are you belt fed about anything? Are you angry? Frustrated? Emotionally charged?
I'll tell you, I mean, the only frustration I had at all this weekend was at the grocery store. And the normal stuff
It's just people
of
with
people.
their cart.
They're freaking carts. I just don't understand. Like, park cart on left side of aisle, stand on right side of aisle.
Oh my gosh. I experienced the same thing, but it was actually pretty funny. There was a lady with her cart in front of me and this guy with his cart over here, but she was trying to get something out of the freezer or something and he was helping her. Well, then they were elderly and they had a moment of love at first sight or something because they were totally flirting. It was adorable.
Awesome.
I couldn't even interrupt them to say, "Hey, can I squeeze by?" I mean, they were chatting for like 2 minutes, and I was just standing there like, but it was adorable listening to them. And then, so I rarely take my husband to Costco with me, and
why?
Because he usually pushes the cart when we go shopping together, and I just run around and grab stuff, but Costco is a place where it's a dog-eat-dog world. Like, you get after it. And if you don't, and same with Aldi, if you don't, then you are struggling all the time. So,
is he too nice?
Yes. Yes.
That's my wife.
Too nice. And I was like, look, we just gotta push on. Because nobody there will recognize you. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
Nobody cares. And if you pull out in front of somebody or it doesn't matter. That's what you got to do. And otherwise you're going to get run over, period. And it's
like driving in New York. Like, there's no rules. You just go.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, that was fun.
This is not something we necessarily talk about very often, but it's something I definitively noticed yesterday in me. Yesterday was a gorgeous day outside.
Yeah, it was.
Didn't have a lot of things going on, but had enough that like I wanted to kind of get up and get going and get stuff done and just knock things out. I get very frustrated when I'm sitting around and there's things to do and whether it's just my thing or the whole family thing or whatever, and everybody else isn't up yet or people are up, but they're just like don't care and moving nice and slow, and like I want to start knocking stuff out.
I'm same way.
And I went outside, I got some stuff going and whatever, and then I went outside and did a workout yesterday, and my brain just changes.
Oh,
I love it.
Absolutely.
Man, it made me feel so much more okay. Just to go outside and throw things around and beat stuff up for 45 minutes or whatever.
Yeah. Exercise is so good for your brain.
Gosh dang.
And your
I
your
know
state
that.
of mind.
I know that, but I could like feel it yesterday because most of the time that I exercise, most of the time is early morning. Before work. Before I've had a whole lot of before I've had an opportunity to get frustrated about anything.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't notice that effect nearly as much, but
Yeah.
it was really pretty nice.
I agree. I feel that way with yoga because if I don't stretch in the morning, I'm probably doing it to myself. Like it's now that I've conditioned myself to
Good
get
morning.
stretchy. If I don't, I feel like I'm like 20 years older. Hi,
You are 20
Grant
years older.
Snarby. We call her Grant Snarby. That's what Ben calls her. That's my aunt. She's awesome. How did John like class yesterday?
We won't be able to tell because the comment will come up and disappear super
You know
fast.
what? You're a hater.
I am. You're correct.
Get rid of this little guy. Okay. What are we talking about today?
I honestly, I don't have any idea. You titled it. I don't remember.
I had to title it about 4 times because
Oh yeah, if you didn't see, I guess you already kind of said it, but she started our first video upside down.
at least I did it on the range account this time.
Yes. But now are we on the range account or are we back on your account? Yeah, 2 weeks ago, last week? I don't know, 2 weeks ago or something, we did our whole live broadcast. And she even mentioned afterwards, she's like, man, like my whole family was there. It was crazy.
Tons of my friends I haven't seen in a long time. I'm like, wow, like look at all these people. Like,
And then
it was
we
awesome.
realized after everything was done that she did it on her personal account instead of the Range's account.
What's Liz going live for? It was awesome.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we're going to talk about defensive use of a gun and some ethics surrounding it, especially considering here in Missouri, our laws are really much in the defender's favor, which is a good thing. However, we don't want to push that line ethically, morally, legally even. And I think it's important to talk about, you know, the stand your ground law and your castle doctrine and these things like that, because while it seems to a lot of people perceive this as it gives you permission to use a gun, and it's like, no, it's just John Correa from Active Self-Protection. He says this all the time. It's like, it's not when can you use your gun, it's when must you use your gun.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a valuable mindset to have.
Totally different mindset. And we hear that all the time. Well, if somebody does this, then I get to do that.
No.
No, that's the wrong way to think about it, and damn sure the wrong way to say it.
Yeah.
And I definitely think there's an important distinction there, an important mind shift of the way to think about self-defense in general.
Yeah. We don't want to, and this is where ego kind of gets in the way too, because if somebody's done something to harm you or harm someone you love, you feel like that the gun gives you the ability to pay them back. It's like, well, they pulled out a knife and stabbed me. I drew my gun and they said, oh crap, dropped the knife and started running away. Well, you already caused that damage to me, so now I get to return the favor. And it's not like that. You only use it as a way to get to safety or to defend your life from being harmed. And the moment that stops existing, you have to recalibrate, and that's hard to do. The second that we're just like, well, just do this, it's like that's not easy. And if we would be terrible teachers if we told you that, well, just do it and it's fine, and of course you can just drop your ego and you got to do it that way. You're discrediting human nature. You really truly have to understand human nature's desire to want to win a fight, because we're competitive. I don't care if you think you're competitive or not. Your ego plays a viable role, a huge role in a lot of your decisions. You don't even realize it. And if you're not in control and aware of it, then it's going to cause you problems.
I think understanding your ego and your desire to win or one up the person or whatever is an important thing just to have an awareness of.
Yeah.
Because you could find yourself. We had a discussion a couple weeks ago about something that I nothing ended up happening, but I was playing through a scenario in my head at my kid's soccer game. This things were getting out of control between the teams, and one team was being very truthfully sore winners, and I really wanted to say something to the coach afterwards, like, hey, you've got a great team of players, but you have a terrible team of good athletes because they're just not playing the game properly.
Yeah.
But I want to say that because I want him to know that, hey, I noticed and everybody else noticed that your team's a bunch of jerks. But then, like, I know my attitude might come out more than it should, and I know that if I challenge him, his ego's going to feel like it needs to be defended, and then he gets a little bit louder and I get a little bit louder, and what does that lead to, and for what reason? Yeah. Right? There's no point in it.
The flip side of that, though, is that their ego helps them succeed, because ego is a good thing too.
Yeah.
There's a bad and a good side to everything, especially like that, and it's, your ego is what keeps you moving forward to reach that goal, to do better than the person at the top. Like, there's nothing wrong with that, given that you understand it and you understand just like what you said. Like, of course, my body language and the way that I say things, my tone of voice is probably going to come out, because this is really frustrating right now. And I think to be able to make that decision in the moment, to keep it to yourself, because most likely you could say that, and unless he's very open to criticism like that, which given his attitude and his team players, he's probably not, you're not really going to have an effect on him.
Yeah, I don't. There's a balance there, right? Like, certainly you can start in a conversation like that, and we're skewing a little bit from the conversation, but in a conversation like that, you can start it differently, less aggressive or more aggressive, and that could definitely change or direct the outcome of the conversation.
Sure.
And I don't remember the quote. I read it or heard it just over the weekend, I think, of essentially, if you ignore bad conduct, you're essentially applauding that conduct. You're giving acceptance to it, right? And there's some credence to that if you just kept doing one thing over and over and over again that I don't approve of, showing up late to work every day, and then, well, obviously Phil's not saying anything, so doesn't matter, I can just keep doing it.
Yeah. I think that's different versus the social construct of, like, talking. If they are, like, completely impeding on you, and if I were to show up to late work every day, call me Late Liz, even though I'm never late, but that is a direct issue with this. But his team players, unless his players were hurting your team or something like that, then really you're just trying to be like, hey, stop being a jerk face.
Yeah.
Anyway,
even to let them know that it's seen and that it's noticed and that it's not appreciated.
Yeah.
But back on topic. Sorry.
I think it is topic, though, because while it is a thread of the topic,
just fluttering away,
it matters, because if let's say you did engage with that coach and he decides to get aggressive with you physically because it's infuriating to him that how dare you say something. You could have been the nicest person ever, and sometimes you being the nice person will actually engage that aggression more.
Yeah, because they feel like they have that dominance over you. Sure.
And then he decides to get physically aggressive with you. You pepper spray him or something or whatever, and he draws his knife out and you get your gun out, and, like, the things escalate from there. And then for what reason? Exactly. We look back and say, for what reason? But did you have to run away from that situation because of our stand your ground law? Like, does the stand your ground law theoretically mean that you don't have the duty to retreat? That's what it means. But let's say that guy got aggressive with you and you're like, look, dude, I'm sorry. I just thought I could say something. You're right. It's no big deal. Just let it go. Yeah. And you could do that. And while you don't have to, per our stand your ground law, you decided to. And this is where line, you may be right, but it ain't worth the fight. I know, I love it.
And truly, just to be able to think through that sort of stuff, and if I do this or if I say this, there's a possibility that this could happen, or this could happen. And then if this happens, here's what I'm going to do. If this happens, this is what I'm going to do. You start having a decision tree to pull decisions from instead of trying to make something up in the moment.
Yeah.
And obviously, I don't want to get in a fist fight with somebody in the middle of a soccer field in front of my kids and a bunch of other teenagers and parents and stuff. I have no interest in that.
So Jennifer, she says, who are you trying to teach? The coach or your kid? Use it as a teachable moment and discuss with your kid so he doesn't become a jerk winner like this. I think that's a extremely valuable piece of advice.
And that's honestly exactly what we did.
Yeah.
Because, all the kids on our team saw it and had mentioned it. And it was interesting that their team started getting a little bit more aggressive physically because they were winning so much. They just decided to try to, bully the kids around. And in we have some pretty tough kids on our team, and it almost started escalating a little bit just because of that.
I think that's all. And also she said, if you really feel like you need to talk to the coach, maybe wait until emotions are more leveled. Wait a day, and if you still feel that way, find a way to reach out. That's an incredible idea.
Or I could just walk up and punch him in the face and make myself feel better.
Yeah, of course, you could do that. But it's also kind of goes to society in general. It's like, are you going to try to change everybody's behavior around you so that way they can accommodate your feelings, whether they were right or wrong? I'm just saying, like, if you can teach yourself and your kids to know that there are easygoing people, there are difficult people, there are all kinds of people in this world. So if you can, this goes to the de-escalation thing. You can't de-escalate someone else. You've got to de-escalate yourself. So if you can be mindful of the fact of how other people have tendencies to do things, and just be like, whatever, I'm going to be in control of what I'm going to do and choose to walk away or even say, you're right, I'm wrong. And even if you're not, just walk away, get out of it. So back to the castle doctrine and the stand your ground. To my knowledge, and this is something I've recently learned, or at least been able to see it from this perspective, is castle doctrine and stand your ground are very similar. Most states have some variation of this. What I have found, and you probably know more about this than I do, is that if a state does not have stand your ground law, which is the no duty to retreat from any place, it's like as long as you have a lawful right to be there, you have the ability to stand your ground or not retreat.
Just to be clear, like in Missouri, we've had stand your ground for a very long time, but it wasn't right now. The big words in it is any place you have a legal right to be, right? That covers you very broadly in the state of Missouri. A lot of places will have stand your ground, like their stand your ground law is just in your home or something along those lines. So you can't say just because a state has a stand your ground law that it means from any place you have a legal right to be.
Well, that's kind of what I'm talking about, is that a lot of states don't have it. There are some states that don't have a stand your ground will have a castle doctrine. So it is a more confined version of the stand your ground, to which it means that as long as you're in your castle, which is generally, again, we're Missouri instructors, we don't know all the state's laws, but in Missouri, castle doctrine defines as a lawfully occupied dwelling or vehicle.
Or any other place you have a legal right to be.
Not castle doctrine. Stand your ground, yes.
I'm pretty sure you said stand your ground. Maybe you didn't, but
that's what I'm saying is the stand your ground is an extension of your castle doctrine. Now, most states that don't have a stand your ground law will have a castle doctrine, but there are some states, Missouri extends that to past your castle, and that's really what it is. It's like they're kind of one and the same in Missouri here. It just extends your castle out, whereas if there's states where you only have a castle doctrine, it's in your lawfully occupied dwelling and or vehicle. Because the castle doctrine and the stand your ground law gets confusing.
Oh yeah,
super confusing.
Twist those up a lot. I wish I could rewind back and hear what you just said, because I don't know that I necessarily agree with how you said the words.
I really wish that I could remember which. It had to have been one of the books that I'm reading recently, or maybe it was one of the attorney videos that I watched. I think it was an Andrew Branca video, your favorites, about stand your ground.
I really don't like that guy.
I know. He's got good info, but I know it's just his attitude.
Nothing unintelligent. There are some things I think are unintelligent about him. But he's obviously good at his job. There's a couple things I don't like about him. One, he rants on some of the dumbest crap sometimes. And this the one that really got me was a cyclist one, and it was terrible.
Yeah, but it's just like he can't know everything.
Yeah,
he's talking about what he thought he
and
knew.
then he gives defensive advice sometimes, like training advice that I don't necessarily always think is the best. Like, hey, if this happens, the guy should have done this instead of that. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know that I agree with that. I think his legal advice is typically pretty solid.
Yeah.
He's smart with that sort of stuff, but he kind of veers outside of his lane, I think, sometimes.
Yeah, that makes sense. So anyway, what is if you could define Stand Your Ground versus Castle Doctrine, what would be the big difference, or what would be the most...
Luke, good morning.
The biggest change?
Well, so your Castle Doctrine has to do with your castle, right? And again, we're defining this how Missouri defines it. And states can be different, vastly different. In Missouri, it's essentially your home. Any place that you're residing in temporarily or permanently, so it could be a tent, it could be somebody crashing at my house, staying at my house.
As an invited guest?
As an invited guest, yes.
Yep.
Or my car when I'm in it, right? So the big picture that I like to paint for Castle Doctrine is essentially, in Missouri, what our Castle Doctrine does is it takes away the burden of you as the homeowner or the person in the dwelling of having to easily be able to articulate that you were in fear for your life because the person had a gun, had a bat, had a knife, had a deadly tool in their hand, right? Our law makes it very easy for you to assume that if there's somebody illegally in your home, we'll say, that you are reasonably in fear for your life. It still has to be reasonable. Like the overall thing has to be reasonable, but the Castle Doctrine makes that
threshold lower.
Yes, makes that easier to articulate. That, hey, I woke up in the middle of the night and I bumped into Bob, who's not supposed to be here, and I used a firearm and defended myself. Versus you walking down the street and bumping into Bob and you use a firearm to defend yourself. That's totally different things.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, Stand Your Ground doesn't extend Castle Doctrine outside your home. That's kind of what you had said that I disagreed with.
And
that it's the same thing outside your home, because that's not true.
Correct.
If you are in fear for your life or the life of somebody else, you don't have a duty to try to get away before you go to lethal force.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to make an effort. However, you still have to be deemed reasonable. So if a prosecutor doesn't think what you did was reasonable, you're going to have charges brought against you. If it goes to trial and the jury doesn't think what you did was reasonable, you're going to get convicted of a crime. So just because you don't have a duty to retreat doesn't mean that's not always
a good idea.
The best option.
Sure.
Or a option. It's not something that you have to be focused on from a legal standpoint, but it is something you have to be focused on from a legal standpoint. If that makes sense, right? You have to make sure that what you're doing is reasonable. That you're not just hanging out. This guy said he was going to kill me, and he had a knife in his hand, but he was duct taped to the chair, and he was cutting himself out of the duct tape, and I just stood there and waited. Then when he stood up, I shot him.
I think that I think the reason why I said the way that I said it was because I don't believe, and you can what if the situation all day, because, somebody in your house, we all envision someone just walking into your door while you're sitting there on the couch or something. At least that's a lot of times what I envision, someone crossing that threshold, getting into my house, kicking my door in or something like that, of which that behavior is going to give me a pretty reasonable thought that they're there to be violent, or they're at least willing to be violent to get whatever they want inside my house. I I think I kind of passed over the active aggression part, like outside of a home.
Yeah.
And I think I did that because I still feel so strongly about the reasonableness of using force inside
Absolutely.
your house. And you didn't discredit that
Yeah.
at all. But I think that even with the castle doctrine, and I think that goes to the point of this title, is that even though you have that lower threshold of the castle doctrine of assuming someone in your house is going or willing to cause you harm, yeah, I think that threshold is lower. But we also don't want to say, like, well, they were in my house and
So
I
could do it, so I get to do that.
Yeah, and if someone walks in here, there's a video that we play in CCW. This guy walks into the front door, and the guy stands up and like points his gun at the guy, and the guy's like, I don't know what he was doing, but he just kind of stood there for a second. But he then turns around and walks away. Or what if it was your drunk neighbor that came in, or like there's all kinds of these situations. But like, especially with your car, this happened to one of my students out in the parking lot. She was sitting there waiting for one of her friends to show up to come in and shoot on the, we'll read that in a second, shoot on the range. And while she was sitting there, a guy got in her back seat, a complete stranger. She had no idea who it was. And he got in and he even said to her, he's like, well, you're not my wife. And, he was a little older and was having some trouble with, just knowing where he was in general. So, but beside the point, she didn't know any of that. And, if you're sitting out front waiting for your sister to come out of the bar or something and someone gets in your car, like the castle doctrine says that is a person there to do you harm. And while that's not at least a consideration, you have to,
Yeah,
it's just not an easy thing. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It's just
so. Brian
had
mentioned something that a lot of it also depends on the DA is how they're going to,
yeah.
and that's absolutely true, right? That's absolutely true. That some DAs are going to view that differently than others. You want to read through that, or
Sure.
I've got an example that I want to give to you.
So Brian says, any place of dwelling to include your vehicle by which you are unable to retreat further into. As your home is your castle, it is reasonable to assume that if someone is attempting to force their way into your home, you can presume it is forced home invasion and defend yourself accordingly. Yeah, 100%. And you're saying force, though.
No,
like that's
the only thing that you're unable to retreat further. There is, you don't have to
go hide or anything.
Yeah, because if I have the ability to run away, but the dude's running up to my kid's room, I'm not running away,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like I'm standing here, bad guy there, and he starts running towards my kid's room. I could run out the back door and run myself to safety. You don't have an obligation to do that whatsoever inside your home, for sure.
So he says, remember a few years ago where that guy in the city killed another guy breaking into his car, and he killed the man from across the driveway, claimed castle doctrine, got convicted anyway because he wasn't in his car, nor was he a direct threat.
And people think that all the time. So
Right.
our castle law
Good morning, Dennis.
pertains to vehicles when you're in it.
Yeah, lawfully occupied.
Lawfully occupied. And we drive that point home because not a lot of states, I don't know if I should say a lot of states, there are states that do not put that in their castle doctrine. All right, so in the state of Missouri, if you're in your vehicle, and so we'll highlight that, in your vehicle as lawfully occupied, right? That's where the kicker is. If you're in your car when bad guy A is breaking in with a gun in his hand or whatever, your burden's been met, essentially, to be able to use lethal force. If you're in your driveway or in the front of your house and somebody's in your driveway breaking your car and you just start shooting, you're wrong and you're going to prison, and you should.
Unless your kid's in there.
Yeah. Now, if you're protecting somebody else's life. So I give an example of that. Our castle doctrine's pretty solid. I mean, it really is. Our Missouri's castle doctrine is pretty solid that essentially if there's somebody in your house who doesn't belong there, who's there illegally, you can defend yourself with lethal force. However, it still has to be reasonable. So I usually give the example of, hey, if you finish class today and you walk in your front door and you see Phil the bad guy with your 85-inch TV walking through the living room, and you're like, okay, I learned all about this. Phil the bad guy's there. I'm in my house. He's in my house. Can you just blast away through the TV? He's in your castle. He's there illegally. No, you cannot, because any reasonable person is going to say, hey, you walked in your front door and there's somebody standing there. It's going to be way more reasonable for you to go, and turn around and walk back out the front door. It's not the check in the box to be able to shoot somebody. It's not what that is. Now, if you wake up in the middle of the night and that exact same thing happens, it could be a little bit different, right? But the fact that you had just walked in your house and Phil, the bad guy, doesn't even know you're in there because he's blocked by this super awesome 85-inch TV you've got, and you just start blasting through the television, you're going to jail, prison. My opinion, anyway.
So, I got a spicy question. You ready?
Okay, sure. What about at your home asleep and... Sorry, disappeared. And no knocks get involved in a shootout with the homeowner.
The police no knock and get involved in a shootout with the homeowner. Is that self-defense?
In my opinion, yes, especially if they are in the wrong spot.
You're gonna have that's gonna be a hell of a court battle.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And
if this is just simply my opinion, if the officers were acting in good faith, maybe on bad info or whatever, they didn't flub up and the no knock says for 1, 2, 3 and they're at 1, 3, 2. That's a different story. If they were acting in good faith and everything, it was just a screw up across the board, I think essentially it's going to be a no fault thing. Now, people are going to die for sure. Could there still be civil stuff there? I think so.
It's going to be a shit show.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's awful, but it is. I don't. It takes a lot to get a no-knock warrant. It's not.
And then obviously if they're coming in with guns and if you realize that it's cops, you should. If you try to be defiant because you know they're in the wrong spot at the wrong place at the wrong time, a gunfight's going to happen, right? I mean, that's just what's going to happen. If you are compliant in that, and hopefully nobody gets shot, I think you have a very good.
I forget what they
call
it, but there was several instances of this happening to a YouTuber that I watch occasionally. I forget what they call it, but it was
swatting.
Swatting, yes. It's a terrible prank.
Ooh, man.
But someone essentially calls in and says that there is an active killer situation at a location, whether it be a house or, hey, I just saw this guy break in a window with a gun in their hand, and so then they send multiple officers with the intention of stopping somebody with a deadly weapon, and they come in with a lot of force. And that's a very highly charged situation. And that would be one of those cases where the cops are acting in good faith, but they're coming into a place that was not what they expected it to be.
Yeah.
And if you don't, if you're like the most cleanest citizen ever and got a no-knock would never ever come to you in your life, and then all of a sudden you're getting your door kicked in and your kid's asleep in the next room, you can't even imagine the mental state that everybody is in that condition, and you would be reasonable, and if you didn't know what was happening, to try to defend yourself against someone coming in your door with that amount of force. But if you know that it's the cops, then I would try really hard to be as be compliant as possible, even if it's wrong, and not. It's tough because they're going to come in with guns pointed at you.
Oh yeah.
And they're people, so it's tough. It is tough.
Yeah, without a doubt.
I will just note a Roomba dustbin will hold 1 full bottle of Tannerite and stuff accordingly. Booby traps are illegal. Whoa, I almost died.
Yeah, that was almost a disaster.
So, ethical use of a gun. You need to be reasonable.
Yeah.
That's
what it always comes down to.
Always.
And what is reasonable is subjective.
Can I tell my knife story? We battled on that knife thing for a while.
Oh, sure.
Oh, sure.
Oh, sure.
Okay. So for a while, I have an irrational fear of knives, and we came across
Irrational. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, irrational. So we came across this what if situation, and it was actually one of our instructor courses where you live in this apartment complex, and one of your neighbors, a couple stories up from you, is constantly getting into verbal conflict with you, and they've said things in the past like, I'm going to kill you, and I hate you, and you should die, like all these terrible things, right? So you have an issue with your neighbor. And one day you pull up and you're parking, you get out of your car and you start approaching the apartment building. You see your neighbor up on the third you see your neighbor up on the third story waving a knife at you, said, I'm going to kill you. You better not come in here. I'm going to kill you, blah, 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 blah. So you draw your gun and you shoot him up on the third balcony.
Third floor.
Third floor. Was that justified? So I feel so silly. You know, because
Liz was like, yeah!
I was like, he could have thrown it at me and it could have stuck in my throat, you know, like.
She had like 80s ninja movies stuck in your head.
100% I did.
Throwing
And
stars and
yes, because where did I get that from?
movies.
No real life fighting, no real understanding of real knife usage, or I also didn't play sports a lot and throw things. So my understanding of physics in that regard, like when he said it to me, the light bulb that came on in my head was so unreal. He was like, what did you say? It's like,
if I stand on the roof and you stand in the parking lot and I throw a baseball at you, here's what you do. Right?
I think it was the fact that it was a baseball, because I was no longer irrationally in fear of the knife. But when you said a baseball and you said that I could move out of the way because it was moving that slowly, I was like, oh, it's just, I know it sounds silly that I would even think that way, but it is. But
again,
I'm glad that I learned.
Who grew up playing baseball or soccer or hockey or whatever else, you have a better understanding of the distance and speed relationship and how long it takes something to get to you, and the fact that you can step to the left or to the right and that thing will not hit you.
But the emotions were higher for me because of also that fearfulness of the blade, the knife. And that's really important to recognize, because you need to know yourself. You might have a paranoia of clowns, and a clown jumps out at you in a dark alley somewhere and just goes, and makes this crazy motion at you. That doesn't mean you need to shoot him in the face.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that it's not going to be crazy, but you know, if they're not giving you any physical aggression or any real understanding that they're going to get physically violent with you, you can't do that. So you got to be in control of your own emotions, especially when it comes to things like that.
It does. It's. We often use the irrational fear of dogs as an example, just to make it easy for people to understand that just because you are scared to death of dogs doesn't mean it's a rational thing, that you are not acting reasonably if you see somebody walking down the street with their chihuahua and it scares you to the point where you fear for your life, so you feel justified in using lethal force to defend yourself. That's not rational.
It's only
it's not
personal.
Reasonable.
Yeah, only person. That's your truth.
Yes. Oh boy.
So someone referenced the 7, 14, 21, the 21-foot
distances
rule, the 7-yard thing. Well, in CCW class, we shoot at that distance. Because go ahead and say it.
So it just I don't like to say it's a rule.
You're right.
Because it's not an absolute.
That's the way it's often called.
Yeah, the 21-foot rule is that, hey, if somebody's within 21 feet and they have a deadly tool in their hand, that I can easily articulate that I fear for my life. Now, is there ways that you can more easily articulate? Sure, with training and stuff, you can start to understand that, hey, I know from experience that within this distance, I couldn't beat the action. My reaction to this person's action was too slow. So I know that you should just then know that I need to keep more distance. Vinny and I actually did a very interesting thing. I wish Vinny's teaching right now. I really wish he was out here. We did an interesting, I say experiment loosely, on action versus reaction, and times that it takes people to draw their gun from a holster and so on. And we went downstairs. I had a gun in my hand. This stemmed from a relatively recent YouTube video on moving and shooting. Should you be moving then shooting, or shooting and moving? Defensively speaking, does movement matter? And it's kind of an interesting thing, quasi-scientific. But really what we did was I had my handgun kind of down, pointed towards the ground, 45-ish degree angle, but my gun's out, fingers ready to go, and Vinny couldn't move, and his gun's holstered. He was doing, I think, just a level 1 holster. And as soon as I would start moving, he could then draw his gun and we would each shoot targets. Now, we were going for relatively small targets. We were doing headshots at 5 yards. He was 0.3 of a second behind me consistently, which is still pretty damn fast, right? From the time I started moving until... What the hell just happened?
I don't know. It was fireworks.
There was fireworks.
And then I keep seeing these little bubbles.
What?
Whoa!
I give a thumbs up.
That's because the iPhone's the best. Anyway.
Is it gonna happen again? What the hell just happened? That was the craziest thing.
I don't think it's you.
That was weird. Anyway, then we swapped roles. I did the same thing, 0.3 of a second. We went. What did we do? Oh, we went from Vinny actually having his hand on his gun to doing it, and it obviously got faster. It was just an interesting experiment. Now, Vinny's really freaking fast. So for other people, there's going to be a much bigger hindrance. And now that I've gone down this path of action versus reaction, I don't remember where it started.
We were talking about the 21-foot quote unquote.
Oh, yeah. So you need to understand what that distance is for you, and can you even draw your gun in 3 seconds, let alone,
oh my gosh,
let alone 4 or 5 seconds or 1 second.
they're just going back and forth about what you put on the internet, and anyway, it doesn't matter. So I think it's really important to know that just because someone is within that distance doesn't give you the legal right. Again, it's all a perspective, reasonableness thing. But to understand that someone within 7 yards of you can get to you very quickly. That's also important to know. And even if you get, this person is covering this ground towards you with a deadly weapon in their hand, and let's say it's a knife, it's not even a projectile weapon, they can do a ton of damage to you before, even if you got them, I hate even articulating these things. Let's say you got 2 good shots and in a proper placement, and those should be debilitating shots. They still gotta have that blood loss and everything, and you could still get quite a bit of damage in a short amount of time. So it's really important not to discredit how fast people can move and how long it takes for the loss of blood to cause incapacitation. And neutralization. And you need to understand your own reaction times, right? That especially if you haven't decided, right? Like in the case downstairs, Vinny knew that at some point my gun was going to come up, and as soon as it starts moving, the only thing he has to worry about is drawing his gun, right? So that lessens your reaction time because the decision's already been made. Mm-hmm. If you're trying to come up with decisions, like you've kept your distance, but you haven't really considered if that person decides to start closing that distance quickly, this is what I'm going to do. You try to make that decision in the moment rather than accessing that decision. It's your reaction time is going to be slower. So let me ask you this. If you have a 4-second draw, that's slow. If you conceal carry, you need to do better.
You should be at least 2.
So if you have a 4-second draw, does that, yourself in this regard, does that, just think of the legal repercussion after this. It's like, well, I know that I have a 4-second draw, so I know that if I have a 4-second problem, I need to I need to get that gun out sooner. So essentially it's like, you know that you're behind the curve, so you choose to draw your gun or your weapon sooner. I think that that's not, it's not a fair fight. I mean, like, they're the ones that chose to do this, but what I'm saying is that an appropriate response in your reasonableness? I think when it comes to your training, we're trainers, so I want to say, like, no, do better. But what if you have an ailment, like you can't run, you have a pacemaker, you have this, you have that, like maybe you're just recovering from this awful pneumonia crap that's been going around, and you literally know that you can't breathe, and it's, you know, you have to know yourself and what you're capable of fighting through and what. But like, is that an acceptable reason to get your weapon out sooner in order to stop the threat?
Only if the weapon coming out is justified.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't matter that because you could be causing the escalation. If you're like, hey, this guy's getting closer to me, so I'm going to draw my gun because I know that I've got it duct taped to my ankle and I have my boot bands bloused over the top of my gun and I have to do all this stuff. So it's going to take me 8.3 seconds to get to my gun. So this guy's starting to look at me sideways, so I need to kneel down and undo all my stuff and get to my gun and be like, hey!
That's a really, really good point, because that is so often, that's the way I felt when I first started carrying. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so new at this. Things gonna escalate. Like, I have to intuit things ahead of time and know the future, and that is absolute bullshit. So you can't know the future, and you can't get deadly force involved until it becomes a requirement. And that's really important that you recognize about the situation in yourself. You know, get better training and know yourself for sure.
So if you have a 4-second draw, that's fine. You need to be better than that.
Yeah, you're just going to find yourself behind the curve.
You need to be better than that, because the gun can't come out till the gun can come out. I mean, that's just the way that it is. It doesn't matter if you have a half-second draw or a 12-second draw.
So Brian says there's a lot to say about shot placement and the ability to actually stop a threat. It is extremely rare to hit a person and drop them immediately. In Iraq, they had an average of 9 rounds to stop someone. Absolutely. Yeah. And it took a while to get those 9 shots and actually cause the...
We talk about that a lot in CCW, and then especially in Defensive 1. We talk about that a lot, that it's not this magic button that you see in the movies. You shoot somebody once and they get blown through a brick wall and off a 12-story building. That's just not the reality of how things work.
So then he also says, so can you get 9 rounds off before they close that distance? So here's the thing, is while that is it is really important to understand that one shot's not going to send somebody through the wall, but it might. Display of your gun also might. And that also means that even though there's a good chance there's many rounds that need to be fired for someone to be physically incapacitated by blood loss, you can't start that process sooner because of that. Like what we were just talking about. If your draw takes that long or your shots take that long, you can't start that process before that recognition of your life is there.
So I don't like to give the numbers like that of saying you got to shoot 9 rounds or 6 rounds or 5 rounds, because I don't want people to try to say, well, I have to shoot 6 rounds, right? That's what I have to be able to get off. And maybe they've got 3/4 second splits. Bang, bang, bang. So then they just keep doing it. Bad guy fell down, or bad guy was like, screw this, and turned around and ran away. And you like, well, I got to get my 6 shots off. So you just keep going. We always say you shoot till the threat stops. And the more rounds that you can put on target quicker within an acceptable level of accuracy, the better. That's where your grip starts really mattering. Grip doesn't matter for shit for shooting 1 round at a time. It does not matter. I can have a terrible grip and shoot my gun and take all day and keep shooting bullseyes.
It helps if you turn sideways.
Yes. Then
put your hand on your chest.
Yeah.
Oh no, on your hip.
Wait. No, do it behind me.
Oh right, gotcha.
Anyway, I can shoot and take a week to put 12 shots on a target and shoot all bullseyes. It's when you want to be able to do that quickly, and that speed is a combination of all sorts of different things: distance, whatever your acceptable level of accuracy is, and how well you can hold the gun and see the sights floating around, or have the gun aimed of some sort. You may not even see your sights. You may not even see your dot. If it's at 3 yards, I'm not going to see a dot. I'm going to see the back of my gun, right?
Yeah.
I'm just pointing the back of my gun at the target, and you're going to make good hits if you've done it a bunch and can feel confident in that.
Good morning from Chris, Jason, and Mark. Driving back from Florida State IDPA, where Jason finished high veteran. That is freaking fantastic.
Yes.
Congratulations, sir. I'm sure that
Guys,
was a fun match.
Enjoy the road trip back.
Yeah. It's nice here in Missouri.
Oh man, it's going to be a gorgeous
70 degrees
freaking day today.
Yeah.
Gorgeous freaking day today. It is 9:30. We've
Holy
been
smokes.
rambling for a really long time.
I think we covered a lot, and it's a big topic.
We could. I mean, we could talk. We could keep going on this. Unfortunately, we have stuff to do. You have calls to get set up for, and I have a meeting. So.
And it's, people struggle sometimes with the 8-hour CCW class. Like, come on, do I have to sit here through this? Like, the amount of information, there's no way 8 hours is enough.
Yeah, no.
Like, it's not. And as much as I want people to, I wish I could pay tax dollars to give people free training on this stuff, but it's just not the case. So, what's wall tour? No wall tour?
No wall tour. Oh, no, not today. Sorry, but you only do that occasionally because Liz likes to talk a lot.
Yeah,
and
I like to run my mouth.
Yeah.
So
yeah, not today, unfortunately. We have guns.
We do.
We have lots
of guns.
Lots of guns. So come in and check stuff out.
IWB appendix carry holster for a SIG P365 AXG Legion. Would you recommend to look at? Ooh, I think Filster makes a good holster.
Yeah.
We also started carrying these.
So I've got a Filster Pro, which is what I use for most of my stuff. Actually, for my P365 and for my shadows.
What's your orange one? LAG?
LAG Tactical.
And then what's the Crucial? We started carrying Crucial too. Those seem to be pretty cool holsters. I don't have time behind one. Hopefully I'll be getting one soon to try out for a while. But the LAG I wore of yours for a while was
I really
cool.
like the holster. It's not something that we sell here, but they make quality stuff. The owner of the company is very passionate about making good, high quality gear. So I don't have any problem recommending. I actually had a problem with my holster, and he took it back and made me a new one. So I can't.
Filster also has fantastic customer service as well, and we sell those here. So if you're looking to come in and grab something, I would 100% suggest
I
a
love the
Filster too.
stuff.
And if you wanted to go with a non-belted option, we have the Filster Express, Enigma Express.
I don't know, because of the AXG, I don't know, does that fit in?
I think so.
I don't know.
I guess it depends on if it's a macro or not, because I think the macros have rails and the other ones don't. I don't know. SIG
How'd you get a
confuses
full holster name after you? Yeah, so I always have to clarify that when I'm talking about them in classes. Like, hey, this is not my holster, right? This is not me selling holsters, and I'm trying to tell you they're the best ever. It has nothing to do with me. I wish I got a little part of that, but I do not. Mr. Miller, good morning, sir.
Hi, Andy. So, all right, we got to go.
We got to go. I'd love to sit here and talk about this stuff some more. And the complexities of the complexities of the legal stuff is huge. It's fascinating. It's exciting, and it's scary because you could do everything right and still and still be charged with a crime and maybe even convicted of a crime. There's a great story that I won't get into now just because of time, but in Masad Ayoub's, one of his books on use of force, that the good guy did everything right. He still got charged with a crime and convicted of a crime.
Yeah.
And everything was perfect, but it was also this perfect storm of not perfect.
Yeah.
So, and that really sucks. That really sucks.
Yeah.
He has several great books. Masad Ayoub he's a flood. I mean, he's a flood when it comes to shooting guns and stuff, for sure. But he's been around a long time. He is still the authority on use of force and that sort of stuff. I recommend his books all the time, audiobooks or get one, pick up to read. I've not read Andrew Branca's book, but I've heard it's really good on legal use of force. So I guess that's all I've got to say about that.
That's all I got to say about that.
All right, it's going to be a gorgeous day outside. If, for whatever reason, you're not an outside person and you're not going to go, although walking in the parks and stuff right now it'd be really sloppy. Yeah, they're kind of nasty. But it's also going to be super awesome in here.
Yeah.
Were you just thinking about your backyard and your dog?
Yep. Yep. German Shepherds love mud.
So if you guys need something, come see us, 14803 Manchester Road in beautiful Baldwin, Missouri. Open 10 to 8, Monday through Friday, Saturday 9 to 6, Sunday 10 to 6. Stop it!
Oh, come on.
Couple of big things that we forgot to mention.
Okay, go. February 12th.
What is February 12th? Oh, February 12th. The child sexual exploitation of children.
Human trafficking. And child exploitation.
Yes, there you go.
Prevention seminar.
It's free. It is full with 60 people. If you would like to get on a wait list, send an email, training@therangestl.com. We can put you on a wait list for it.
And if you're signed up for it and you can't make it, please let us know as soon as possible so we can let the other people that are signed up for it.
Our wait list is growing. So please, it's going to be an awesome course. It's freaking disgusting and scary, but it's important information to hear.
Yeah.
The 19th. Women's self-defense clinic down the road at Gracie Baja. We're going to do some striking. It's legitimately going to be a punch, fill in the face day.
Yes.
And some grappling.
Today's the day.
It's only $50. You get a free set of Rev Gear gloves. It's going to be awesome. Going to be a great event. Normally when we do those events, we just do grappling. We're going to do some striking in this one as well.
Punch, fill in the face.
Punch, fill in the face.
And then February 22nd is 2A day.
2A day.
So we're going to have some guest speakers out here. Chief of Baldwin, Bergfeld, and KD from No Other Choice Training, and Alex Shea from the GOA.
Yes.
They're all going to be out here. We're going to have a freaking
Alex,
fantastic day. There's free shooting all day, so the lanes are free all day. And then they're going to be speaking at the end of the day. We also have a CCW class that day. And if you want to learn more of this stuff, come and take a CCW class.
And then hang out after the class from 6 to 8 or 6 to 9 or something. That's when all the presentations will be for 2A day. And then we have Silent Night. I'm drawing a blank on the day, what day it is. It's in February also. Silent Night, if you want to learn about NFA stuff, specifically suppressors, but we can also get into some of the other NFA stuff if you want more info on machine guns or SBRs or SBSs. That's a great event for that. I think it's $50 or $60, but you get to shoot rifles and pistols and try out different suppressors and ask all sorts of great questions. So super awesome event. You can sign up for that on the website as well. Now, that's what we got going on.
I can start to press the button.
You guys stay safe, be nice to one another, and we'll catch you soon. Later.
Toodles.